BBC iPlayer.
Now on BBC One, the Christmas Day evening news with Clive Myrie.
King Charles pays tribute to the medical staff who treated him and the Princess of Wales for cancer. In his Christmas message, he offered heartfelt thanks for the strength, care and comfort they gave during the uncertainties of illness. More than 30 die in a plane crash in Kazakhstan, 29 survive. It's farewell to the character Gail Platt in Coronation Street after 50 years and...
Will you marry me?
What was the answer? All was revealed for fans of Gavin and Stacey in tonight's final ever episode. A very good evening to you. King Charles has used his Christmas message to pay tribute to the medical staff involved in the cancer treatment he and the Princess of Wales have received this year. He described them as selfless and also spoke of his deep sense of pride at how communities around the country responded to the summer riots. Here's Daniela Ralph.
The King and Queen led the royal family from church on the Sandringham estate, a moment to reflect on the challenges of the past 12 months. The Prince and Princess of Wales were with them, alongside their 3 children. For the crowds who stood for many hours waiting for a glimpse of the royals, there was a chance to chat and hand over gifts.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much.
It's very kind of you to come all this way.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good night.
In his Christmas message, delivered from a former hospital chapel in central London, rather than a royal residence, the King spoke of the suffering we all experience at some stage of our life and touched on his own experience of cancer treatment.
From a personal point of view, I offer special heartfelt thanks to the selfless doctors and nurses who this year have supported me and other members of my family through the uncertainties and anxieties of illness, and have helped provide the strength, care and comfort we have needed.
Recalling his visit to Australia and Samoa, he talked of diversity as a strength, not a weakness, and emphasised the power of community, especially after the summer riots in the UK.
I felt a deep sense of pride here in the United Kingdom when, in response to anger and lawlessness in several towns this summer, communities came together, not to repeat these behaviours, but to repair. To repair not just buildings, but relationships. And, most importantly, to repair trust by listening and, through understanding, deciding how to act for the good of all.
The King's Christmas message from this small, intimate chapel is more personal and more direct this year, reflecting the challenging 12 months he has been through. The King's cancer treatment will continue into 2025, but palace sources say this Christmas he is feeling positive about the year ahead. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
Officials say 29 people survived a plane crash in Kazakhstan that killed dozens of others. The aircraft had left the Azerbaijani capital of Baku en route to Grozny in the Russian Republic of Chechnya, but was diverted because of fog. Duncan Kennedy has the very latest.
This was the plane in its final moments. Descending at high speed, its landing gear down. The pilot appears to be struggling to control the jet. It banks just before impact. Much of the aircraft was crushed into a burning trail of wreckage. Emergency workers converged on the scene, some crawling inside the plane looking for survivors. Incredibly, dozens of passengers made it out. This man, just one of those staggering from the carnage. They were saved by this tail section, the only part of the aircraft left intact. The local hospital was filled with those wounded but alive. This man says, when the plane crashed, my wife was sitting next to me. I haven't seen my wife since the crash. This is the family of one of the flight attendants on board. Their fears calmed by a video call he made from his hospital bed, saying, "Don't worry, tell Mum not to worry. Thank God we're safe." The plane had been diverted by bad weather en route to Grozny in southern Russia. The president of Azerbaijan says experts will now look at all possible causes.
The reasons for the crash are not yet known to us. There are various theories, but I believe it is premature to discuss them. A criminal case has been launched by the Prosecutor General's office.
President Putin is sending in this plane with specialist teams to help. Some of the passengers on the crashed aircraft were Russian. It was made by the Brazilian firm Embraer, which has a robust safety record. It will now help with the investigation of a crash that both took but also spared many lives. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
President Biden has condemned Russia's Christmas Day missile attacks on Ukraine, describing them as outrageous. He also insisted the US will continue its surge of weapons deliveries to the country. More than 170 rockets and drones hit Ukraine's energy infrastructure. One person was killed. The attackers left 500,000 people without electricity around the country's second largest city of Kharkiv. Well, Will Vernon is live in the capital, Kyiv, for us now. Will, the energy infrastructure has been hit before, but there's been much condemnation for this attack coming on Christmas Day.
Yeah, well, Ukrainian repair crews have been battling throughout the day to restore power and heating to hundreds of thousands of residents throughout the country. They were cut off after Russia launched this huge barrage of ballistic and cruise missiles and attack drones on a bitterly cold Christmas morning. And the target was the energy infrastructure. Incidentally, the one person that was killed that you mentioned in your intro there, that was an energy worker, one of the men and women who day and night, under pressure and under fire, are working to keep the lights on here. Earlier, President Zelensky released a statement vowing to repair the power grid, thanking those who protect Ukraine's skies, and saying Russian evil would not break Ukraine and would not spoil Christmas. Clive, Ukrainian cities come under fire from Russian bombs and missiles every single day, and Russia for months now has been systematically crushing Ukraine's energy system. About 80% of it is destroyed, but this was a particularly large-scale attack. And of course, it came on Christmas morning. Russia doesn't celebrate that holiday today, but Ukraine does. So a particularly upsetting, of course, start and Christmas Day for Ukrainians.
Indeed. All right, Will, thank you for that. Will Vernon there live in Kyiv. Pope Francis has used his traditional Christmas message to call for peace in Ukraine and an end to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, along with the release of the hostages being held by Hamas. The Pope, who's 88, also welcomed the beginning of a Jubilee year for the Catholic Church. Coming every 25 years, they're intended to help the faithful spend time focusing on reflection and penance. And here, the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, in his Christmas sermon says the Church of England needs to kneel in penitence over its handling of a number of abuse scandals. He'll shortly be taking interim charge of the Church after the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. Here's Ali Makboul.
Give hope, peace and joy as part of his plan. Lovely.
Christmas is when the Church is at its most prominent in British life and its most joyous. Churches up and down the country are filled with the story of hope defying darkness. But this year there is a troubled backdrop, and local clergy are hearing the frustration.
It is just a magical time for the community. But this month has been really hard to be in the Church of England because of all that's going on. It's an institution that's probably in crisis, really.
Last month, Justin Welby resigned as head of the church after a report pointed out his failings in dealing with a prolific child abuser.
In the beginning.
With no Christmas sermon from the Archbishop of Canterbury, all eyes were on York Minster and the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell. But he too is now under scrutiny for his handling of a child abuser in his charge, though he says he did everything he could. In his sermon, he said people needed to do more than just talk and needed to act.
To put the needs of others first. Those who are cold and hungry this Christmas. Those who are victims of abuse and exploitation.
I just feel that he's not the right person to give that message at this time.
She doesn't want to be identified, but one of the abuse victims of the priest that worked for 9 years under Stephen Cottrell, despite his knowledge of the serious concerns about him, says it's now hard to listen to the Archbishop preach.
I just feel that he hasn't really thought about how victims would feel in this context and how he is happy to be the voice of the church moving into Christmas when all I see when I see him is a man that has let me and many victims down.
Some bishops chose to directly address the church crisis in their Christmas messages, but not the Archbishop of York. After his service, he greeted members of the congregation. Given the criticism of church leaders, there will be some who heard the Archbishop preach, in his words, about the inadequacies of those who talk a good game, but whose words aren't embodied in actions, and will do so with some sense of irony this Christmas. Aline McBall, BBC News at York Minster.
Take a look at this. It is one of the world's most active volcanoes on Hawaii's big island, Kalaua, and it sprang into life again on Monday, spewing lava 80 meters, around 260 feet into the air. It's one of 6 active volcanoes located in the Hawaiian Islands, which also include Mauna Loa, the largest volcano in the world. Now, millions of fans of Coronation Street have been watching one of the longest-serving characters, Gail, appear on the cobbles of Weatherfield for the very last time. The actress Helen Worth has stuck with the character through thick and thin for half a century. Now 73, she says she feels truly blessed to have had such a long Corrie career. Here she is in action over the years.
He's not coming. I can't think who you're on about. Ray Langton. Oh, him? Yes, him. And don't crack on with sat here because you suddenly like the fresh air life, because we're not. Please. Please tell me it's not true. You're twisted. You're Norman Bates with a briefcase.
Yeah, she didn't take much persuading, did she? She never does. And you were happy because it's the only chance you're going to get of the grandchild of that pervert. Go home, Gail.
Are you ready, Mrs. Chadwick?
Ready as I'll ever be, Mr. Chadwick.
It could only be Corrie. Now, last time they left us guessing, and tonight fans of the BBC's Gavin and Stacey finally got the chance to see whether Smithy had accepted Nessa's proposal. Lisa Mazimba has more, and if you don't want to know what the answer was, look away now.
Audiences have waited 5 years for the resolution of the cliffhanger ending of the last Christmas special.
Will you marry me?
It's been a relatively warm Christmas day for many of us, but not for the hardy folk here at Boscombe Beach in Bournemouth. Hundreds took a cold plunge in the Channel to raise money for Macmillan cancer nurses. What a way to spend Christmas. But spare a thought for the crew aboard the International Space Station, 2 of whom have been stranded high above the Earth for more than 6 months, not expecting to be in orbit at year's end. They should have been in space for just a week, but technical problems mean they won't be back on Earth till March at the earliest. That's it. From me and all of us here at BBC News, have a peaceful night and Merry Christmas.
Good evening. A white Christmas, maybe in our dreams. It was very much a green Christmas or a grey one, depending on your point of view. The highest temperature was recorded